Premier ministre, la sortie de M. Lightbound, est-ce que ça nuit au message de votre gouvernement? Et allez-vous changer le ton du message? Votre ton à vous et au gouvernement n'est pas bon.
On a toujours été un parti d'une diversité d'opinions et on se parle et on écoute nos commettants et on partage nos perspectives sur la meilleure façon d'aller de l'avant. Mais on a toujours aussi été clair que la meilleure façon d'aller de l'avant, c'est d'assurer que le plus grand nombre de Canadiens soient vaccinés possible, parce que c'est avec la vaccination qu'on passe à travers cette pandémie, c'est avec la vaccination qu'on évite de devoir imposer de nouvelles restrictions à travers le pays. Oui, nous allons toujours écouter les gens. Je comprends à quel point les gens sont fatigués, les gens sont tannés, les gens sont frustrés. Mais en même temps, il faut reconnaître ce que les Canadiens ont pu faire pendant cette pandémie pour passer à travers en étant là les uns pour les autres. Et c'est ça qu'on va continuer de faire. Over the past many weeks, I've had many conversations with all different members of the caucus, including Mr. Lightbound on a number of occasions. I spoke with him yesterday morning. We're going to continue to talk. We're going to continue to go through this the way Canadians are, where, yes, we're all tired, yes, we're all frustrated, but we continue to be there for each other. We continue to know that science and public health rules and guidance is the best way through this pandemic, is the way we're going to get to the other side. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Vous parlez de M. Lightbound. Pourquoi vous le gardez dans le caucus?
Ben, il est un membre très important de l'équipe. Il apporte des points de vue intéressants, comme l'ensemble des députés, et c'est pour ça que... Ben, non, M. Lightbound va demeurer membre du caucus. Non.
No? Okay, so what about his views? How are they going to be discussed in caucus? Because I think there's a discussion some members want to have.
Discussions in caucus are discussions in caucus.
Chair of the Industry Committee.
Mr. Lightbound, I think my statement yesterday made very clear what the outcome of yesterday was.
He's not going to face any consequences.
He chaired a meeting yesterday.
And to think about what we will be doing to live with this pandemic in the future. It's not going to be going away entirely, and so it's a good time to be reflecting on that. But now is not the time to be dropping those kinds of restrictions. So, thank you.
Well, I think we're going to have that conversation today. We're a Big Ten party, and we have differences of opinions at times, so this is nothing new for any party. No, I don't agree with him. I don't agree with the way he went about it, but we'll have that discussion, and I'm sure there'll be...
His message helpful given what's happening outside the winds and all over Canada right now?
I think it can lead to further confusion, so no, it's not good timing. Well, I mean, we should be following the science, and we should be listening to our public health advisors, and so it's not helpful to confuse that message right now.
Part of his criticism is that message is confusing, that the government and public health have been confusing Canadians to an extent, and they need to get a clearer path forward. What do you think about that?
Well, I think Minister Duclos and the Prime Minister have been very consistent with their messaging, and there should not be very much confusion in terms of what they have been saying. So anyways, I'm sure there'll be more comments after the caucus.
What do you think of Mr. Lightbound's declaration yesterday? Do you agree with him?
Look, I like Joël. He's a friend of mine, and I have a lot of respect for him. I don't agree with many of his conclusions, but I do understand his sentiment. It's been frustrating, and there's an ongoing, debate everywhere in society, including in our own Liberal caucus, about when is this going to end, what kind of measures do we need. So this discussion is ongoing, and I understand that he's expressing those frustrations. I disagree with some of his conclusions.
The Liberal Party of politicizing vaccination and...
Yeah, that's where I disagree with him. I do acknowledge that vaccination and public health measures have been politicized, and it's regrettable, but it's not politicized by us. And my proof to that point is that provinces who have conservative governments have also been mandating public health measures and vaccines. Private sector employers have also been mandating vaccine. So it's not a partisan political issue. It's science. Vaccines save lives. And yes, there have been voices that have been politicizing these mandates to exploit the sentiments that Canadians have about their frustration, and it's regrettable.
And you don't think the Prime Minister has done that? You don't think the Prime Minister has been politicizing mandates?
No, the Prime Minister has been targeted by many of his critics, accusing him of doing so, but he's been steadfast in standing with Canadians to protect their health and safety. We've been following the science. We've been following data. And yes, science has evolved. And yes, public health measures. Just 2 months ago, premiers were apologizing for not having enough public health measures. Few months ago, all of you were asking government officials, why aren't you doing more? Things are changing and evolving, and I understand people are frustrated, but we need to continue to follow the science and be there for Canadians. Thank you. Thank you.
J'ai beaucoup de respect pour M. Lightbound. J'ai travaillé avec M. Lightbound pour 6 ans et il est vraiment excellent comme député. Mais c'est impossible chaque jour d'être dans la même position avec chaque député chaque jour. Alors, c'est important pour le député de dire les choses que le député pense que est important, mais pour nous, c'est évident que notre restrictions sont importantes dans le niveau fédéralement. Et on doit penser pour un moment, si quelqu'un entrait dans un train ou un aéroplane, c'est essentiel d'être vacciné. Et ça, c'est le mandat. C'est essentiel pour les transports d'entrée aux États-Unis d'avoir le vaccin. Ça, c'est le règlement. Mais ce n'est pas juste le règlement ici au Canada, mais c'est le règlement aux États-Unis.
Does the federal government need to be clearer about when that mandate should end, given the public health situation, hospitalization?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think, look, there's a lot of confusion out there, and people are exhausted. I'm exhausted. The things that we normally get energy from and we normally are able to do in our lives, these restrictions are difficult. But let's be clear about what the federal restrictions are. The ability to get on an airplane or a train right now says you have to be vaccinated. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. We're looking at when you board a place to travel to another place in a pandemic to be vaccinated. That is overwhelmingly supported by Canadians. I think there's a lot of conflation and confusion.
Canadians are also asking, how long will you have to show a vaccine passport to get on a plane? 5 years? 10 years?
Well, I mean, look, I think that right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and an evolving situation. Omicron is fading. The number of people in the ICU are coming down. We have always made our decisions on science, not clairvoyance. There's not a person among us who's a psychic. And I think we all have to take a step back and watch how the situation's evolving. What we've done here, and whether or not it's in the House of Commons in terms of our presence, in terms of scaling up or scaling down, or whether or not it's in our response to COVID scaling up and scaling down, we move with the numbers, we move with public safety, and we give information as soon as we can make it available. But I think to try to enter into a game of saying what's next with COVID, I don't know. I think what we're going to do is focus on the numbers right now.
Est-ce que vous n'avez pas de responsabilité en tant que gouvernement d'utiliser un langage qui est peut-être moins inflammatoire?
Tout le temps, dans la politique, c'est important de réduire les partisaneries, particulièrement pendant une pandémie. Et ça, c'est chaque jour, j'essaie de faire exactement ça. Et oui, mais c'est normal avec les politiques. Il y a des positions dans chaque côté et on débat des enjeux, mais pas dans une façon personnelle. Et c'est pour moi, c'est chaque moment, c'est important. Et pour moi-même, de considérer de réduire mon niveau de partisanerie chaque jour, et particulièrement avec une situation aussi tense que la situation à l'extérieur, de réduire la partisanerie, de rester sur les faits et de continuer de regarder les sciences et de travailler avec ça.
Monsieur Poissonneau, est-ce qu'on peut vous demander ce que vous pensez de la sortie de votre collègue Joël Lightbound?
Je pense que vous avez bien entendu M. Holland là-dessus, et donc je n'ai pas de commentaire sur les énoncés de M. Lightbound. Mais J'aimerais parler. Je pense que c'était clair. Je n'ai pas de commentaire là-dessus. Mais let me just say that based on Premier Kenney's comments last night, when he came out with the restrictions and compared what people who don't want to get vaccines are facing to the discrimination that HIV people face through their lifetimes is categorically false. HIV people living with HIV, were forced out of their homes, were refused medical treatment, were denied or fired from their jobs, and were discriminated against, and this has gone on for decades. The Premier of Alberta must apologize. Full stop. C'est carrément impossible. On demande des excuses de Premier ministre Kenney pour ce qu'il a dit à l'égard des personnes atteintes de VIH. Now, as it pertains to the restrictions in Alberta, this comes with risk. I have lived through, my family lived through, my people in my riding lived through what was supposed to be the best summer ever and turned into being the worst summer yet. So we have to, and I know people are tired. Moi, je suis fatigué, je suis tanné de la COVID. Je veux que ça change. But we have to do this safely and responsibly so that we don't have to pull back later.
Would you make a difference from the HIV segment given his history in San Francisco campaigning against same-sex couples being able to see each other in hospital?
Look, the Premier has a checkered past when it comes to campaigning to prevent same-sex. They weren't partners at the time because they didn't have the right to get married. But I wouldn't have been able to go see my partner on his deathbed if he had AIDS based on what the Premier did and what he was campaigning for in California successfully at the time. He has apologized for that, and I'll give him that much, but he needs to apologize for this completely false comparison between anti-vaxxers and HIV, people living with HIV.
Are you concerned, so you're saying you're concerned that it's maybe too soon to loosen these restrictions, but what data do you think the federal government has when they're looking at the future of vaccine mandates?
Well, look, we take the science and the reports from Dr. Tam very seriously, and the Premier is completely within his right, as is Premier Moe and Premier Legault, to do what they've said they're going to do. I see the data at the top of a curve here, and I don't see enough data points going down yet, and so there is risk with the decision made in Alberta. I understand this is the Premier's decision. What I'm saying is there's great risk here, and I want to make sure we do this responsibly so that we don't see him pulling back later.
Il y a des propos de M. Kelly, évidemment, plusieurs, comme M. Lightbound, qui dit que le gouvernement doit changer de ton. Il y a plusieurs qui disent ça. Vous en pensez quoi? Que le gouvernement doit modifier son approche, se montrer...
Mais moi, je suis le ministre du Tourisme. Donc, moi, je veux que l'économie se reprenne et l'économie canadienne ne va pas prendre toutes ses forces malgré le bon état dans lequel l'économie se trouve maintenant. Mais tant et aussi longtemps que le secteur du tourisme ne reprenne pas ses forces, on ne va pas avoir notre pleine économie en croissance. Ça veut dire, moi, je veux que les gens voyagent, mais quand c'est sauf et sécuritaire de le faire. Donc, ça veut dire qu'on va continuer à suivre la science et quand on peut démontrer qu'on peut alléger les restrictions dans notre possibilité, on va regarder à ça. Mais pour le moment, il faut le garder. Que le
gouvernement stigmatise ceux qui ne sont pas vaccinés.
Du tout. On a été clair qu'on veut protéger la santé des Canadiens et Canadiennes et c'est ce qu'on va faire. Merci. Merci. I think what it's time to do is to take the best look at the science and to look. This is a conversation that I have with my colleagues on a regular basis: is how do we send a clear signal to Canadians in the sector that we're doing this? But we have to keep the health system secure and safe, and we have to keep Canadians safe. Merci.
What about the trauma restrictions? His answer on the tone is interesting. I'm the Minister of Tourism. Listen, what more can the federal government do here? What more tools can they give to CBSA?
Well, I can tell you that these protesters blockading the Ambassador Bridge, $400 million worth of goods crossing it every day, is tantamount to standing on the windpipe of our community. We're talking jobs lost, we're talking plants closed, we're talking produce from farmers that can't get to market. The protesters need to go home. And I can tell you right now, we've been engaged with the Prime Minister's office, Minister Mendicino. We are speaking with local police forces, working together, collaborating. We need to see the end of this protest.
What about a legal injunction? Can the Attorney General do anything in terms of giving more tools to the border officers and law enforcement to open up those supply chains?
Well, right now our focus is on supporting the police of jurisdiction, which is the Windsor Police Forces, who have done an admirable job, highly professional in dealing with the protesters, but we need to see the protest end. This is having an incredibly negative impact on our community, as you can imagine.
In that context, what do you think of what Mr. Lightbound said yesterday about, listening to the concerns voiced through those convoys
Well, you know, in this party, we have a lot of different opinions on matters, things that we discuss openly. But I can tell you that we support this government and support the policies that have been put in place, because at the end of the day, they have been protecting Canadians. They have been protecting the health and safety of Canadians and protecting the economy as well too.
He's wrong. Like his analysis, his assessment is wrong.
Well, you know, we are open to having conversations. We've always been open to having debates and conversations. That's what meetings like caucus is all about. But I can tell you that we're resolute in terms of protecting the health and safety of Canadians. That's always been our focus, and that's what's helped get us through this pandemic the last 2.5 years.
Can you stay in caucus?
Well, it is my, well, you know what, we're going to be having conversations, I'm sure, today on that issue, but I can tell you that in this party we have open conversations and open debates about all sorts of issues.
Would you want him to stay in caucus?
Well, we're going to be having that conversation, I'm sure.
You personally?
We're going to be having that conversation. Yeah.
What do you think about the timing of what you said, given what's happening outside and what's happening in your neck of the woods?
Well, again, we're always open to having discussions. We're open having discussions with Canadians. We're listening to Canadians every single day. That means listening to members of Parliament who bring forward concerns of their constituents as well too. But at the end of the day, our party is focused on, and this government is focused on, protecting the health and safety of Canadians first and foremost. That's what we've been doing for 2.5 years. That's exactly what we're going to continue to do. Thank you so much. Thank you.